I didn't even bother with a cake. I just poured myself some coffee, sat on the edge of the counter, and watched the sun rise through the blinds. It was my birthday, not a milestone, not anything dramatic, just another year older, another year invisible. The phone sat there, still, silent. I scrolled through Facebook, seeing balloons and cakes and happy birthday, babe on people's timelines. Friends tagged in brunch outings, family dinners, surprise parties. My screen stayed blank. I didn't even get the pity HBD from my mother. I wasn't surprised anymore, just used to it. They only remember when it's convenient, I muttered. For them, I don't exist unless they need something. It used to sting. Now it just settled in. Like cold air, you stop noticing. 18. I still remember that day. Everyone in the house was buzzing. Flowers, music, the smell of barbecue drifting through the yard. But it wasn't for me. It was for Derek. His high school graduation. I remember standing by the cooler, handing out sodas while people passed me by. The cake said, "Congratulations, Derek," in bold blue letters. Not even a whisper of happy birthday. Not even a card. Mom told me to smile for the pictures. So I did, behind him, in the corner, barely in the frame. Someone spilled red punch on the patio, and I was the one who cleaned it up. That night, I cried quietly in the bathroom, wiping frosting off my shoes. That was the moment I learned silence was cheaper than cake. My phone buzzed. It was her. I hesitated, then picked up. "Hi, sweetie." Mom's voice was bright, almost giddy. "Guess what? We just helped Derek close on his first home. Isn't that exciting?" I blinked. "Wow. Congrats to him." "We gave him a little help with the down payment. You know, just a small loan." "How much?" "Oh, around 200,000. It's nothing. He's a man, after all, has to provide for a family." There was a pause. "Right," I said slowly. "Because I don't have those responsibilities." She laughed, missing the edge in my voice completely. "Exactly. You've always been so independent." I smiled, not with my mouth, with habit. "Thanks for letting me know." Click. I sat there for a moment, letting her words hang in the air. "You've always been just average." It's what they always said, not cruelly, just casually, like a comment about the weather. I had worked 2 jobs since college, paid off every loan, never asked for help. But that never counted. Because Derek needed more. Because Derek was the one they bet on. They call me a failure. But I'm the only one who's never cost them a dime. I leaned back, the silence stretching. Their voices, their judgments, always felt louder in moments like these. At work, it was the same echo. "You're so responsible," they'd say. "But when are you going to settle down?" Like being stable wasn't enough, like peace and order needed to come with a ring. Hazel, my coworker, once leaned over after a meeting and whispered, "Your quiet strength makes people uncomfortable. They can't control it." She meant it as a compliment. I took it as confirmation. I opened my laptop, drafted a message to the family group chat. Something simple, honest. But halfway through, I deleted it. No one wanted to hear what I had to say. Not really. I glanced at the bookshelf. There was an old photo from a barbecue years ago, everyone smiling. I was there, but someone had cropped me out when they framed it, not even maliciously, just conveniently. I looked down at my phone, deleted their numbers, one by one. This time, I won't beg for a seat at a table I was never invited to. That Monday evening, I slipped back into routine like a worn coat. Familiar, reliable, invisible to everyone but me. My night class was already in session by the time I stepped into the room. It was my favorite kind of quiet. People focused, pens scratching, light humming overhead. No noise of validation, no echo of comparison, just effort. Ramon raised his hand mid-lesson, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Ms. Tinsley, you make this stuff actually make sense," he said, grateful and sincere. He was a single dad trying to earn his GED, always the first to arrive, last to leave. I nodded, the corner of my mouth lifting. It's not hard when you actually want to learn. That hour flew by faster than I expected. After class, as I locked up and walked to my car, I felt something rare, a flicker of peace. Driving home through Tulsa's quiet streets, I thought, in a world where I'm invisible at home, strangers remind me I'm worth something. I let that thought sit with me longer than it should have, because I knew, deep down, it wouldn't last. The next night, Hazel and I grabbed dinner at a low-key place near the office. She needed to vent about a board meeting. I needed a meal that wasn't microwaved. Between bites, my phone buzzed. A group text from the family chat. Photos, screenshots, glowing praise. Derek, my brother, had given some regional finance keynote. My mother's caption read, "So proud of our future CEO. The world is noticing." And then, like salt thrown into a wound, came her follow-up. "Tinsley, maybe you could teach your night class about ambition. Derek's already changing the world." Hazel saw the screen. Her smile froze, then slowly faded. She didn't say anything right away, just pushed her glass aside. "You don't deserve that," she said finally, voice low. I tried to shrug. "It's just how it is." "No, it's not," she said, firmer this time. "They use you as a wall to bounce his achievements off, like your life only exists to highlight his." That silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, and I didn't know what to say to lift it. The next morning, my phone rang as I poured coffee. Dad's name flashed across the screen. I didn't pick up, but the voicemail rolled in right after. I stood there, listening on speaker, cup still in hand. "Hey, honey, just wanted to say, I'm proud of how strong you've always been. Really, you've got grit. And listen, there's a tiny thing, nothing big. Derek's expanding his business and the bank just needs another name on the paperwork. Could you maybe co-sign? You're so reliable, they'll approve it in a heartbeat." I turned off the phone before he finished. The only other time he'd said he was proud of me was when I bought a beat-up Toyota at 24 with money I saved waitressing and tutoring on weekends. That was a decade ago. Now, suddenly, I was good enough, because I was useful. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, the bitterness quiet and sharp. Later that week, I saw Dr. Myra, my therapist. I hadn't planned to bring any of this up, but the words spilled out before I could stop them. "They don't want me, just my signature," I said, voice thinner than I meant it to be. She looked at me, gentle but steady. "Tinsley, when people only see your value when they need something, that's not love. That's convenience." That's silence again. But this time, it wasn't from hurt. It was from clarity. "What would it look like," she asked, "if you stopped being available?" It followed me out of her office like a question I'd been too afraid to ask myself. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote an email to my father. I didn't rant. I didn't accuse. I just wrote with precision, like someone outlining terms in a contract. I will no longer participate in systems where I am only present as a tool. I read it twice, then again, but I didn't send it. I printed it, folded it, slid it into my wallet behind my license. Hazel caught me in the break room the next day, saw the weight on my face. "Write it?" she asked. I nodded. "Send it." "Not yet." She paused. "If you never speak your truth, they'll keep writing your story for you." She was right, but some truths require time to say out loud. That evening, I sat on the couch, legal pad in my lap, researching financial boundaries, what co-signing actually meant, how to legally protect myself, what rights I had. It was boring, technical, but it was power. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel helpless. Not quite strong, not yet, but steady. A few days passed. Then another voicemail. "We told your brother you'd help. He's counting on you." I deleted it before it even finished. The envelope arrived late afternoon while I was filling my car with gas. No return address, just me watching the cashier ring up fists full of change. I sat in the driver's seat, fingers trembling. I held my phone in one hand, the other pressed against the envelope. My breath felt louder than the traffic. I peeled back the flap and drew out a folded document, yellowed, frayed. My name was scrawled in Mom's handwriting on the top. I stared at it, disbelief choking me. The original will, an old version showing land, bank accounts, property that ought to have been mine. At the bottom, a note. This was your right once. The cursive seemed to mock me. I shut the car door, heart pounding. All those silent years. I wondered if nothing was ever accidental. I remembered shadows of conversations as a teenager, my parents huddled behind closed doors, words like adjustments and protective clauses. I was eavesdropper enough to catch just in case, better safe than sorry. A cousin once murmured, I heard they changed the will last minute, just for flexibility. And once, when I was 17, I glimpsed a folded page in a drawer labeled Druitt Estate Will. I brought it to Dad's study. The next day, it was gone. I pushed my doubts down, swallowed them. It felt dangerous to question. Now I couldn't ignore what reality offered. I dialed my mother, my voice steadier than I felt. Why did you hide this from me? She answered after a long pause. You weren't ready. I pressed harder. You've called me a failure my whole life. How was I unready for what was always mine? She sobered, said nothing. Her silence hit me harder than any insult. I hung up, palm pressed to my chest, the ache unmistakable. I closed my eyes, letting betrayal settle in. Driving past our old home later, I noticed peeling paint, shutters hanging off hinges, the front lawn wild. I thought, this house was once mine, silenced, abandoned. A knot of anger and sadness twisted in my gut. All these years I built from nothing when someone else already claimed the foundation. I fought tears, longing. The question grew sharper. Should I dig out what was buried or leave the grave untouched? I called Mirabelle. Her voice on speaker filled my living room. I told her everything. Envelope, note, memory. She didn't react with shock. She asked questions. Do you have other versions? Bank statements? Signatures? I nodded, explaining Cassian had access to old archived files at his job. Hazel promised to reach out to the cousin who mentioned the last-minute change. I felt a tremor of cautious hope. This wasn't just rumor, it was real. And now we had paths to the proof. That night, a knock rattled my door. My heart slammed. I slid across the floor in socks, peered through the peephole. Dad stood there, holding a worn letter, shoulders tremor. His eyes settled on me with a question I could hear without words. He said, You don't know the rest of this story. The letter shook in his hand, and I braced yourself for what he might guard with silence. I drove back toward the family house in Knoxville, the one that used to feel like home. They'd invited me to a planting ceremony, some kind of family event meant to look like reconciliation, new trees, fresh dirt, fake smiles, the kind of thing they do well. The house sat on the same land I played on barefoot as a kid, but now it looked more like a museum than a home. Freshly painted shutters, manicured lawn, polished brass plaque out front. Druitt Family Legacy Grounds. I parked down the street and walked, one hand deep in my coat pocket, fingers tightening around the aged will I'd brought with me. Just in case. Faces I recognized moved through the yard. Uncles, old neighbors, cousins I hadn't seen in years. They smiled when they saw me, but their eyes slid past me like I wasn't real. I'd felt invisible before, but now I saw it happening in slow motion. Inside the event hall, banners hung high with our family crest printed in gold. Pictures from past generations lined the walls, group photos from weddings, reunions, anniversaries. I spotted one that included me, but the plaque underneath left off my name. Just Druitt Family, Knoxville Branch. No mention of Tinsley. Around me, chatter buzzed like mosquitoes. Harlan's vision's really reshaping the estate. He's always been the leader. She? Oh, they gave her that little teaching job. Kept her in town, didn't they? A cousin leaned in too close and whispered, They figured you'd stay small. Quiet. She smiled like it was kindness. My jaw tightened, but I didn't answer. Hazel stood across the room near the refreshment table and gave me a knowing nod. She'd heard it too. Later, after most of the toasts and pleasantries were done, I stepped toward the podium. I had been invited, on paper at least, to say a few words. I held the microphone steady. My palms were dry. I began simply. I wanted to say thank you for those who made space for all voices to be heard today. I barely finished that line before Winona's voice cracked through the speakers from the back. Time's up, dear. The mic went dead. No feedback, no flicker, just dead air. Then came applause, loud, orchestrated, like someone hit a button. Harlan took the stage with ease, greeting guests like nothing had happened. I stood there, the mic still in my hand, mouth half open. Nobody looked at me, not even the ones who knew better. I tasted metal. My whole body buzzed with shame. My thoughts ran like lightning. They didn't fear my words. They just erased them before they could matter. I walked out, found a small room down the hall, pressed both hands against the cool wall, and breathed. My chest heaved, but no tears came. I wouldn't give them that. The memory came back sharp, being told at 8 years old to let the men talk at dinner. Or the time my mother hushed me during church for speaking out of turn, whispering, "You're here to be seen, not heard." No more. I pulled out my phone, hit record, captured the moment my mic was cut, scanned the crowd's blank faces, panned to Harlan being cheered. I layered it with an earlier group text thread, my request to speak, their confirmation, sent it to Hazel. Her reply came quick. "I know a local reporter. You ready?" Cassian texted too, had found deed transfers with my name on earlier versions, later scrubbed. Mirabelle messaged, "Ready when you are. Let's make this public." I felt the fear crawl up my spine, and then it stopped. Something else had taken its place. I stepped back into the hall. Everyone acted like nothing had happened. The music was soft, wine flowing. Dad stood near the door. He reached for my arm, pulled me aside. "They say your speech was disrespectful," he said, voice low. I smiled. Not forced, not bitter, just certain. Then I guess I'll have to show them what respect really looks like. The morning after the event, I sat alone in my apartment, blinds half drawn, the muted clip looping on my laptop. My face at the microphone, cut off, erased, played over and over without sound. It had gone viral overnight, over 40,000 views by sunrise. The comments poured in faster than I could scroll. "You deserve to be heard. Families silent strong women. This is what happens when you challenge the dynasty." It wasn't fury anymore. It was a burn of clarity, like a match striking inside my chest. I replied to one stranger's comment. "This wasn't the first time, but it'll be the last." I opened a draft post, typing out everything about the will, the years of being written out, then saved it, unsent. The glow of the screen dimmed and left me in a room that suddenly felt bigger, like space had cracked open. At dawn, I walked into a small diner on Gay Street. The cracked vinyl booth smelled of coffee and fried eggs. I chose it because it was neutral ground, no family portraits on the walls, no ghosts of old holidays. My father arrived without a word. He sat across from me, his face lined, his hands restless on the table. I set down the printed copy of the old will and tapped my phone to play his last voicemail, the one where he asked for a tiny favor for Harlan. His voice trembled in the recording. I let it play to the end before speaking. "You knew," I said quietly. "You all knew." He opened his mouth. "We were protecting you." I leaned in, steady. "You buried my worth under his spotlight. Don't call that protection." I didn't yell. My calm cut deeper than shouting ever could. He blinked, as if I'd shifted into someone unfamiliar. Outside the diner, sunlight hit the sidewalk like a warning flare. Memories slid back in fragments, being told to make space for your brother, stepping aside at every milestone, swallowing every small slight. Every silence I'd held had become a brick in the wall they built around me. Standing here now, I realized I wasn't weak. I'd been trained to think defiance was betrayal. This moment, walking away without looking back, was the first true boundary I'd ever set. My phone buzzed. Cassian's text. "Public records updated. Harlan's LLC lists your parents as guarantors, not you." Screenshots followed, documents showing manipulated timelines, signatures that didn't add up, fraud spelled out in black and white. I forwarded everything to Mirabelle. Her reply came seconds later. "That's actionable." I opened my draft post and hit publish. The story went live, calm and factual, each line backed by evidence. Within hours, notifications exploded. Emails from reporters filled my inbox. The power was shifting, inch by inch. Messages from strangers flooded my phone. Teachers, women cut out of inheritances, siblings who were always the afterthought. One message from an older woman stopped me. Your silence helped them. Your voice helps us. I cried, not from pain but from release. My tears were quiet, like the sound of a lock clicking open. That evening, I set up a live QA. No filters, no scripts, just me speaking directly. Minutes before it started, a text appeared from an unknown number. Stop, or you'll regret this. I looked straight into the camera lens, took a breath, and hit go live. The next morning, I woke up to the sharp buzz of notifications lighting up my phone like a fire alarm. The QA I streamed the night before had crossed 500,000 views while I slept. My fingers hesitated before unlocking the screen. Some comments were affirming, empowering. Others sent a chill through my chest. Keep digging, you'll get buried. You talk too much for someone with that much to hide. Teaching doesn't make you special. Sit down. I made coffee slowly, trying to control the pace of something. Anything. Steam rose from the mug, but I couldn't feel the warmth. Cassian called. No good mornings, just straight to it. The firm you named? They've filed a counterclaim. Public defamation. Of course they had. That's how people like them operate. Burn the field behind them, make you scared to follow. I didn't answer right away, just stared out the kitchen window, watching nothing in particular move. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Mirabelle. Her voice was low, tired. Someone inside your circle is leaking what you send us. I stopped mid-step. You mean outside counsel? No, from your direct team. Hazel. I wanted to dismiss it. Hazel was the one who stood behind me at the party, who slipped me tissues in the bathroom. I confronted her the next day at my apartment, showed her the email header Mirabelle had forwarded. She looked stunned. I've only ever tried to help you. I thought we were… You forwarded something from my inbox. To Harlan. Explain that. Her silence cracked something in me I didn't know was still whole. She didn't deny it. She just said, you were getting reckless. I didn't yell. I didn't throw her out. I just walked into the hallway and shut the door behind her. Quiet. Final. Somewhere in my head, I heard myself say, the deepest cuts don't come from the blade. They come from the hand that holds it, smiling. The betrayal settled in layers. The next morning, a manila envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, photos. Grainy shots of me pushing a cart at the grocery store, walking into my apartment, standing on my balcony barefoot. Taped to the bottom corner was a note written in block letters. Stay in your lane, teacher. I drove straight to the local police precinct, filed a report. The officer glanced at the photos and shrugged. Not direct enough to qualify as a threat. You're technically in public space. Technically, I installed extra security. Cassian brought cameras and backup batteries. I started leaving lights on at night, sleeping in pieces. My pride used to keep me upright. Now fear chipped at the edges. Not enough to stop me, just enough to remind me how close I was walking to something that wanted to snap back. That weekend, I drove back to my old university campus. It was almost empty. Alumni weekend was next month. I slipped into the old lecture hall, sat in the last row. That stage down there, that little wooden square, was where I gave my first talk at 24. My hands had trembled back then, just as they did now. I pulled out a notebook and began writing a letter. Not for the public, not for the press. For me. Or rather, for the me I used to be. They'll try to quiet you by calling it love, I wrote. They'll frame silence as maturity, restraint, grace. Then I underlined one line from a quote I remembered reading once. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I stood up. Decided I wouldn't wait for permission anymore. I went home and filmed a 10-minute open statement, TEDx style, straight to camera. I wrote it, spoke it, edited nothing. It was raw and plain and solid. I uploaded it, watched the little progress bar crawl to 100%. Just as it finished, my screen flickered. Wi-Fi signal dropped. Cassian burst in from the hallway, holding his laptop. "Someone's trying to take your site down." "Now?" I grabbed the backup hard drive from my desk drawer, clicked it into place. "Then let's give them a reason to crash it." I sat in front of the webcam, fingers resting on the desk, not moving. The studio lights I'd clipped to the edges of my bookshelf buzzed faintly. Cassian adjusted the mic one last time before nodding from behind the camera. The counter on the live stream rolled past 2,000 viewers in less than a minute. The chat was already streaming fast. "I'm here." "You're so brave." "We're listening." I took one slow breath. "For years," I began, "I was told silence was safer. But safer never built a legacy." I didn't try to be dramatic. I just told it plain. The will, the cover-up, the edits, the people who said they loved me, who decided I was expendable the second I became inconvenient. The chat exploded, some in support, some in denial. Others, threatening, vulgar. I stayed steady. Then I clicked share screen. A document appeared. My old Google Doc. I scrolled slowly, opened the version history. I zoomed in on one name in the edit log. Winona Hartley. Her cursor had deleted my name from the beneficiary section. She didn't replace it with Harlan's. She didn't have to. She just made me disappear. I said, "Some people hide behind legal teams. Others hide behind digital footprints. But the truth is, every word ever typed leaves a shadow." I highlighted the timestamp, the exact moment she erased me. The chat blew up. "You may silence me," I said, "but I am in the archive." I saw her join the gallery view. Her face flashed, stiff, colorless. Then I handed the mic to Cassian. He cleared his throat, eyes low for a second. "She's not just my mom," he said. "She's my hero, and this is our story too." His voice shook a bit at first, but then he read from a message his teacher had sent him. She asked me, "You're proud of your mother, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes. I never want to feel invisible again." He looked straight into the camera. "No kid should grow up thinking they're invisible." Some in the chat typed clapping emojis. Others said crying. Someone wrote, "I see you." The stream didn't slow, it surged. Within an hour, it hit the local news circuit. Then a few national feeds picked it up. My inbox exploded. Former students, strangers, women who'd been written out of wills, kids who grew up as the lesser sibling. The family group chat, on the other hand, imploded. Messages came in, fast, defensive, some full of rage. My father, "You've gone too far." My aunt, "This should have stayed in the family." Winona never replied. Then a journalist called, asking for an exclusive. I said yes. By midnight, the house was quiet again. Cassian had gone to bed. I stayed up replaying his segment, his little voice, his truth, his pride. I sat in that silence, not the kind I was raised to keep, a different kind. This one didn't choke me. It held me. I thought vulnerability was the last wall they couldn't tear down, because I built it myself. Their power had always lived in what was left unsaid. I just said it, the archive, the metadata, Cassian's voice. That was our reclaiming. Just as I began shutting down the studio setup, the doorbell rang. It was almost 1 a.m. I walked to the front door and opened it cautiously. It was Orson. He looked older than I remembered, face pale, hands shaking. He held a worn leather briefcase close to his chest. "There's one more document," he said, his voice hoarse. "It's been hidden all these years." He passed me the case. I opened it slowly. Inside, on top of the stack, was a drawing. Crayon lines, faded, but familiar. It was mine, a child's sketch, a house, a son, and all four of us, me, Mom, Dad, and Harlan, holding hands. Only in my version, I was standing in the middle. Orson showed up at my door like a man already sentenced. His shirt clung to his back, his eyes darting at every sound in the hallway. He clutched a worn leather briefcase to his chest, the same one I remembered from family meetings when everything smelled of old paper and secrets. Without waiting to be invited, he stepped in, placed it on my kitchen table, and slid it toward me. "Your mother never wanted you to see this," he said, voice trembling. I flipped the latches, heart thudding. Inside, a folder marked 1993, private, and on top of it, a drawing I'd made when I was 7, a family tree missing my name. My breath caught. I opened the folder and found not just paperwork, but a handwritten addendum to the will. If she chooses independence, she forfeits all. My mother's handwriting, neat and deliberate. Every time she had smiled faintly at my talk of college or moving away, every subtle "home is enough for you" came rushing back. She had written the limits before I even knew they existed. Orson stayed standing, knuckles white on the back of a chair. "I notarized that addendum," he admitted. "I was told it was symbolic." His eyes searched mine, desperate for some scrap of understanding. I was complicit. Loyalty blinded me. I didn't want to lose my place in the family hierarchy. I thought I was protecting your future. His voice broke. I realize now I protected their comfort. He took a step back, his face crumbling. "Watching you stand in truth made my silence unbearable." I sat there stunned. The betrayal wasn't only from the ones who had tried to erase me, it was also from the ones who claimed neutrality. "Why now?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "Because I couldn't keep living like this." I didn't forgive him. I just nodded, a nod that said, "Now you live with it." After he left, I locked myself in the study. I spread out every document, every photograph, every transcript across the desk like pieces of a life I'd been forced to justify. My mother's voice echoed from an old voicemail. "You chose your path. Don't look back." Tears came, but not as weakness. They were recognition. I had been negotiating for dignity as if it were a privilege. I opened my laptop and began drafting a legal response with Mirabelle's help, aiming to void the addendum under coercion. In my journal, my hand pressed hard enough to tear the page. My life isn't an inheritance clause. My worth isn't negotiable in ink. Cassian didn't wait for permission. He uploaded a video titled, "Read this before they delete it," showing a scan of the addendum. The response was instant. "Conditional love isn't love." She was erased on paper and in memory. A local journalist posted, "This isn't just a family drama, it's legal abuse cloaked in legacy." The addendum trended on Reddit and Twitter overnight, turning into a case study in estate manipulation. My phone rang. "This is 60 Minutes, a voice said. "We'd like an interview." I said yes. Later, I sat in the glow of the TV, watching old family VHS tapes, birthdays, vacations, holidays, moments where the camera cut away just as I stepped into frame. My laugh, faint, half heard. I whispered to the screen. Even when they tried to erase me, I was still there. The resolve inside me tightened. This wasn't just for me anymore. It was for everyone who had been quietly edited out of their own story. I prepared to take the case to court, not for money, but for the record. "They wrote me out," I said aloud. "Now I'll write myself in." As I went to close the folder, a paper slipped out and floated to the floor. Another drawing. A woman and a girl, alone, holding hands. Below it, in familiar handwriting, "The real family." I stared at it, recognizing my mother's script, and felt the air shift around me. I woke up before sunrise. The house was still, just the quiet hum of the heater kicking on and the occasional creak in the wood. Autumn had settled hard, dry, cold mornings that asked for coats and silence. I stood in front of the closet a few minutes longer than needed, then reached for the navy suit. No jewelry, no makeup, no armor but the truth. In the mirror, I looked like someone who had been through it and come out honest. I picked up the folder that held the case notes, the will, the addendum, the drawing. But that wasn't all I carried. I carried the names of strangers who'd written to me late at night. "Thank you. I thought I was the only one. You said what I couldn't." Cassian waited by the door. He pulled me in for a hug that didn't try to fix anything. "Whatever happens," he said, "you already did the hard part. You stood up." We drove in silence, past fields shedding their last bits of color, into a town that never expected to see our name on a docket. The courthouse hallway smelled like old wood and floor polish, a building designed to carry the weight of secrets. I ran my fingers along the edge of the folder as we took our seats. When they called my name, I stood, walked past rows of people, a few faces familiar, most not. Some glanced up, some didn't. I told the judge this wasn't about money, it was about erasure. I said, "This isn't about what I lost, it's about what was taken off the record." Then I showed the drawing, the one labeled, "The Real Family." The room hushed like someone had just closed a door too fast. The judge leaned forward. "Why submit this?" "Because history needs to include everyone," I said, "not just the parts that made people comfortable." Mirabelle added, "This clause was more than legal language. It was a warning to every girl who dared to step outside the role assigned to her." I scanned the courtroom. A woman near the back sat still, hands tight around a worn purse. Her expression didn't move, but something in her eyes caught on the edge of recognition. It wasn't disapproval, it wasn't pity either, something else. We broke for recess. I stepped outside for air, and she followed. She waited until we were alone, then said, "I knew your mother, law school. We were not friends." I studied her. "She was sharp," the woman said, "but she was scared, not of failing, of being forgotten." She introduced herself, Karen Withers, retired judge, then reached into her bag and handed me a faded printout. "Your mom wrote this in '88, submitted it to a legal ethics journal. It was rejected. The title, The Daughter I Could Never Be." I read it alone that night, sitting on the floor, knees tucked to my chest. In her words, "If she breaks the mold, she'll forget me. But if she stays, she'll resent me." I didn't cry from hurt. I cried because for the first time I understood her fear. Not just her control. She wasn't building a prison. She was trying to keep me from walking into one she never escaped. The next day, the court reconvened. The judge ruled in our favor. The addendum was void. Undue influence, psychological coercion. The estate? Divided equally, but I declined my portion. I asked the court to release my share into a new fund, the Daughters Left Out Foundation. Online, the story moved faster than I could follow. Headlines, think pieces, TV panels asking why this hit such a nerve. My inbox flooded. Daughters, sons, even a few parents. "I made mistakes," one mother wrote. "I hope it's not too late to undo them." They asked me to speak, morning shows, daytime talk, but I never went on camera, just voice, always voice. The face didn't matter, the story did. Weeks later, back home, I sat at the old dining table with Orson. We didn't talk much, just walked through the park after lunch, leaves crunching underfoot. I forgave him by showing up. That's all he needed to know. Then, on a quiet Tuesday, I got a call. A legal nonprofit needed someone to help draft reforms around coercive inheritance law. It wasn't glamorous, but it was right. I accepted, not as a survivor, as an architect. I opened my journal. Last page. They tried to write me out. I wrote myself back in. That evening, as I folded clothes into a small suitcase for a conference in D.C., I saw it. A letter on the windowsill. No return address, handwritten. I opened it. First line, "You never knew the whole story."